What are we discussing on today's podcast, you ask? Well, it's Tuesday. That means another crossover with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres, discussing the biggest MLB appointments this season, trade deadline targets, and the latest Locked On MLB power rankings, all on today's Locked On Diamondbacks crossover.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, listening to the always charismatic host of this podcast, Miller Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millerthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel. But without further ado, let's bring on the man for the crossover this hour, Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. I didn't bring him on. I just unmuted him, but there he is. How are you, sir?
I am doing phenomenal as always, sir. I love this partnership of ours. It's unfortunate because people don't see behind the scenes when Miller really just bullies me. Okay. It's actually quite abusive. It's mean. It's cruel. I've said for a long time, his Twitter presence with that very little, like, just classic, that headshot, it's a ruse, ladies and gentlemen. You don't know the demon side. You don't know how absolute trash talkery this man can be. It's true. I've seen the league chat messages, my friend. And now I will say this, not even being facetious at all. Like, I don't know why you're always winning at fantasy sports. Just non-stop. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it.
Good.
Even when he's not good, he wins. Like, his team isn't that good, he wins.
You gotta get in the dance. You gotta make the wild card.
It's true. That's kind of what we got to talk about today, is all the teams that might not even make the dang dance, man. I mean, it's been a year of, I think, and we were kind of comparing, say, the drop off from teams from 2021 that were good to 2022 last year that were good. And the drop off from this year is a lot bigger, I think, so far, with teams in baseball. Like, it's pretty harrowing when you look at it, just how much of a shakeup I think every division's had.
Yeah, I was talking with Sully Baseball yesterday. It was just like, we don't really know. There's still so many question marks surrounding these divisions and who is still going to get hot in the second half. Like, we know the Braves are probably going to be there at the end. We know Tampa Bay is probably going to be there. I want to say my D-backs are going to be there. But outside of that, it's like these divisions are going to change and switch up so much. I mean, the Twins, both the central divisions. I mean, the NL West, you still got so much parity. The Giants are jumping the Dodgers. The Padres are getting hot. So it's like, where the standings are right now could be drastically different by the end of the season. And one quick PS for the listeners out there about how I bully Javi behind the scenes. I was the one that was bringing up how next week is our 1 month crossover anniversary. How I was going to send him a nice gift, a nice box of chocolates, a little fruit bouquet to the door. He's going to come on here and lie and slander my name. So I just want to put that out there. I was the one that remembered our 1 month anniversary coming up. He forgot. But yeah, the standings are crazy, Javi. And I'm looking at that NL West right now, and your Padres in the last 10 games have been performing a little bit better. There's still a couple games below 500. I mean, the Giants are probably the shock in that division with how they've been playing. But how are your Padres starting to look? It seems like they've been heating up at least a little bit. Are they finally starting to come through with runners in scoring position?
Not totally. At the time we're recording this, they lost a heartbreaking game against the Giants that everyone can go check out my show when I recap the game. But too long, didn't read version, if it's too old of a thing for you, is there's questions around Bob Melvin's bullpen management, that guys weren't quite ready. Should they have used Tim Hill? And, Josh Hader wasn't available. Guys were tired. But then the other thing was that they're 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position again. And they lost a game in which Wanso hit 2 home runs. So the runners in scoring position thing is still nuts. I think it's like below 200 still batting average. with runners in scoring position. The WRC plus numbers, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, is also still at the bottom. So they don't even have, I feel like that stat might point to, say, drawing more walks and maybe are they getting unlucky and what like that. No. It's not just unlucky. The Padres just straight up are just really terrible with runners in scoring position. That's the thing that's going to hold them back. I wrote over at Just Baseball recently, which I think the article will probably be out by now. Just a little panic monitoring for underperforming teams this year that have been really bad. You know, teams like the Cardinals, the Mets, and then the Padres. And I ranked them at DEFCON 2.5, which I equate to when your mom leaves you at the grocery store line. You know what I'm saying? You know how you panic when they're like, wait, I got to go get something, and leave you with the cart when you're a kid, and you're just sitting there and you're like, what the heck? And they're like, all right, next. And you don't know what to do. That's the panic level they're at. It's not the worst in the world.
Okay.
But it's not great, man. I mean, is
it 2.5 out of 10?
No, DEFCON's out of 4, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, so this is high.
Yeah,
so
this
you guys standing in line in the grocery store like the real clear here. I was like 2.5 out of 10 for the grocery store line. I was like, that makes sense. Out of 4. Okay, you got some social anxiety now. All right.
Mm-hmm. It's tough, man. It's tough. They are playing a little bit better, but it still just feels like the same sort of issues. And it's kind of remarkable considering how good they are at every other facet of team building. Or at least I should say of just not even team building, but just the makeup of their team, I think is the way to put it.
Well, let me put you on the spot. Let's do a fun power ranking because we're going to talk about the biggest MLB disappointments. I'm going to throw 5 teams at you based off last season's record in the standings and expectations coming to this year. How would you rank these 5 teams in terms of disappointment? Of course, sadly, have to put your team in there.
Of course.
I didn't want to do it. I don't want to do it. You're my boy. I don't want to do it, but they're in there. St. Louis Cardinals, another team. Number 3, New York Mets. And then to round it out with a little American League, how about the Cleveland Guardians and the Seattle Mariners? If you had to power rank those teams 1 through 5, who do you think has been the biggest disappointment of those 5 teams?
I'm going to say Mets number 1 because bottom line is just the headliner, biggest payroll in history. Yeah. You have to. And I know that the Padres is a lot, don't get me wrong, but I think they're up there. I would say Padres have to be number 2. I would say that if we're doing by like if we're getting really into the nitty gritty, the Cardinals, considering that their division is so bad, if you're a Padres fan, you could be like, hey man, like if you're at a bar arguing with your jerk friends or whatever that are saying you guys choke and stuff, you could say, hey, well, we have the Giants who are consistently good and they find guys all the time. Gabe Kapler won Manager of the Year 2 years ago, and they're really smart with the way they build teams, and they added some good pieces. And Lamont Wade is basically just Juan Soto right now. Like it's possible to say that. And then you have the D-backs who have a great farm and they have the top prospect in Corbin Carroll. And then you have the Dodgers as always. But with the Cardinals, it's like you're getting Cincinnati's kicking your butts now.
Yeah,
you can't really beat the Cubs who aren't good. You're getting your butts kicked by Pittsburgh. The same team that allowed Javi Baez to score when he was a force out at first and they tried to tag him. like it's I think that the Cardinals is a little bit more embarrassing for a lot of reasons. And I wrote about them too in my article, which is kind of like, I mean, that team for how long has they started pitching and they just refuse to address it apparently. So I'd say in order, Mets, Padres, but right behind them Cardinals, because I really do think the division context matters. And then I would go Cleveland, just because Cleveland, they had some questions with their offense for last year too, even when they were good. So, and then Mariners, I'd go 5 because I think that division is pretty good. And they haven't been awful, but they're just they're regressing. You know what I mean? They still got good pitching. Julio's having a sophomore slump, but a good team, but just not. It's not the worst regression though. It's not like they're completely imploding like some of the other teams.
Yeah, I have to check the wild card standings real quick because I want to see how close the Mets are 5 games back. Yeah, I guess that's pretty bad. I was trying to think who would work between the New York Mets and St. Louis Cardinals, because the Cardinals, for all the reasons you just said, I mean, I think when we were picking division winners, the Cardinals might have been the biggest lock, not because they're the best team, but because, like you said, they're in the worst division. Like it was the Cardinals versus like 4 other teams that weren't going to try entering the season.
And the Brewers, for all we know, could finish first and then do what they did last year, which is trade their best player away for no reason.
And this Cardinals team is like loaded with young talent on the major league level, with the Gormans and the Donovans and the Jordan Walkers surrounding the Goldschmidts and the Nolan Arenados. Like they got 2 of the top 3 MVP candidates from last season. They got a bunch of young talent, and to see what they've done this year, I wouldn't be surprised if you want to put them number one. I would probably agree with your New York Mets number one, because do you think this season changes for the New York Mets if they have like Carlos Correa on that roster? Because I feel like it probably doesn't. I mean, Correa, I'm going to look up his numbers real quick. I don't even think he's having like an all-star.
Yeah, he's gotten hot recently, but he's been bad. And that would be my honorable mention for number one. I would say 1B for biggest disappointments. Just every single player that signed a big deal this offseason.
Yeah, that's fair.
Andres Jimenez of Cleveland, Manny Machado of the San Diego Padres, who's heating up recently, but I'm just talking about right now. Carlos Correa of the Minnesota Twins. Who else we got there? Justin Verlander for the New York Mets.
Did you say that?
Trey Turner, who's just Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. He's Nick Ahmed when Nick Ahmed isn't playing well.
Oh God, that's,
you know what I mean?
That's not a major leaguer there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm not kidding. WRC plus is at 82 last time I checked. DeGrom, in fairness, injury related, but even still, Carlos Rodon has not pitched yet. That was probably the second best available guy. Xander Bogaerts, good, but like solid, but the hitting is a problem. He's been a little bit injured. Not as bad as Trey and Correa, but like it's just been all over the place, man. I guess Aaron Judge is kind of the exception. He's been hurt, but like when he's playing, he's probably next to Ohtani, the best guy we have. So
yeah, Dansby's been like all right.
Dansby's another one, but compared to the rest of the class, I mean, Dansby Swanson is like the second coming of like the best shortstop ever, right? Like it's just been crazy how disappointing the free agent class is, and it was a really, really solid free agent class in a lot of ways. But every single player for the most part, Josh Bell, if you want to bring him up from Cleveland, he's been pretty horrid. So just
Abreu hasn't really done much, right? For the
Jose Abreu for the Astros. I think he's a negative WAR player right now. Last time I checked, like it's that bad. It's just really, it's a tough showcase, man. It's really tough to see what's happened for a lot of teams, and particularly those. So shouts to this free agent class just thinking it up right now, and Jimenez and Machado.
And don't forget the largest contract handed out in Chicago White Sox history, Andrew Benintendi.
I forgot about that. Andrew Benintendi, who has never been a super power hitter, but I mean, geez, does he even have one home run? I think he might have just one.
He has literally one solo mente home run.
He's what's that guy's name? Nick something. Nick Madrigal. He was on the White Sox for a little bit. A guy who just only hits like 300, but no power. He'll hit like 300 and slug 300. Like he's just like, it's just, oh my gosh, man, just bad stuff all the way around.
Yeah, maybe that should have been the title of segment number one. Should you continue to sign free agents? Because look at the SPO track. It's bad, dude. I got to pull that right in front of me. It's bad. I mean, Verlander, he's been hurt, but when he's pitched, he's been like, all right, he hasn't been like Justin Verlander. Chris Bassett's been like, I've had him on a couple fancy teams. Like he's either like 6 innings, 2 earned runs, or he's getting shelled for like 3 home runs and like 7. It feels like over 2 innings pitched. So I don't know. I don't know. And I was really confident in this free agent. This felt like one of the more stacked free agent class after this year, because the last 2 years it's been a shortstop carousel. Is another one this year with the Bogarts and the Turners, and then of course it Aaron Judge on the market. Where is Carlos Correa going to go? It's like last couple of years. I mean, we look at free agents. I don't know if it's really worked out. I feel like trade candidates seem to have hit harder than free agents. I don't know if there's like any science behind that, but that's just more of an eye test kind of thing. When you're trading for the Goldschmidts and the Mookie Betts of the world, it seems like those have worked out, signing those guys in free agency. But I guess Lindor was a trade, and he hasn't been exactly elite.
He was a sign and trade too, so that's the other
sign and trade
about him. Yeah, I know that's more of a basketball term, but they traded for him and then extended him, so it's similar to that, I think. But
if you're talking about injury, Edwin Diaz too. I mean, he got hurt immediately. So yeah, free agent class, Spotrac, not looking good. So overall conclusion, don't pay your players. Be cheap. Stop paying major leaguers. Let them walk in free agency.
Don't you dare miss. You're so lucky you're a Diamondbacks fan.
Angels, don't you pay that Shohei Ohtani. He's not worth the money. You let the greatest player of our generation of all time, maybe the GOAT, just walk. Okay, guys?